Hi, I'm Danny, and these are my Diecast Disasters. Here I have a Matchbox 36 Ford Sedan Custom. And this is from the 2019 Moving Parts series. You can see it's got those moving doors there. And apparently it's based off of a real-life custom 35 Ford sedan that was known as one of the earliest custom hot rods. It was officially known as the SoCal Plating Company truck, which was commissioned as a fancy delivery truck by a chap called Leonard K. DeBell, who was the owner of the SoCal Plating Company. And all that info comes from the Matchbox wiki page about it. There's also a link to a more in-depth article about the original car. Anyway, we're cracking on with taking our little Matchbox example apart. There's 2 rivets to drill out. But as you might have noticed, I actually drilled right through the chassis on the first one there. And then when I went to pull the base off, I actually couldn't get it off of the rear there. So I had to go back and drill some more off of the post. And I ended up drilling right through the chassis on that side as well. So just made the holes a little bit too large. Anyway, it's all coming apart now. So there's the chassis there, and then the interior and the wheel guards. And then there's the moving doors and a little metal spring there. Well, it's just a bent piece of metal. There it goes, holding the doors in. Now I can take those out, and then finally I can take out the windscreen there. So there's our casting of the body and the doors, and I'll use some paint stripper, paint it on and dissolve the paint off. There it goes, all wrinkling up, and I can wash it off with some water. And then I gave them all a good clean up and a burnishing with the wire wheels on my Dremel. And here are the castings after I've cleaned them up. Nice and shiny. So I'm just going to do a couple of small things to customize it. And the first thing I'm going to do is cut out these side body kit panels, foot steps or whatever they are. Just using the craft knife to cut them out. So here it is after I've cut them off. You can see it's quite a thin piece of plastic there, and they're a little bit scruffy. So the next thing I'm going to do is to use some of my Starbond super glue. And I'm just going to put a couple of layers along there and let them dry. So it's like a medium thick. And that'll just reinforce it, and then I can file it and sand it smooth again. So I'll make it a bit stronger there where it's really thin, and I'll also help to tidy up the rough edge where it was cut. And there it is. After I finish that, looking a bit tidier now. Next I'll pop the wheels and axles off of the chassis. I'm going to be replacing those. There we go. Next I'm going to do a basic lift on the axles. The way I do this, I'm just going to put some little dabs of glue onto the chassis there. Then I've cut out some little pieces of square styrene. I think it's about 2mm square rod. So I'll just glue those in there. And that's going to be how much it's going to raise up the new axle casing. There we go, there's those glued in place. And next I've got some small tubing here. I'll just mark off how long I need my axle casing to be. Apologies about the camera constantly focusing on my hands. Now I can cut off my little length of tube, and then I'll glue that in on top of the styrene blocks that I put in. There we go, that's the lifted axle. I'm also going to have to just flatten off these little tabs on the base. So I'll just file them off flat. There we go. So now when I go to put the middle section back on, you can see those little tabs that were holding the original axle in place. They're not going to fit anymore, so I'll have to cut them off. So I just cut them off with my craft knife. There we go, and now I can place it back on to the chassis with the lifted axles, and it'll fit. Now another little thing I'm going to do is to cut off that rear bumper there. So I'll just use my craft knife to do that, then tidy it up with a file and some sandpaper. Right, there we go, that's all looking nice and tidy now. So going back to the chassis, and those holes that I drilled out too large, and they're just too big for the heads of the little screws I'm going to use to hold it back together. So I filled them with some really strong epoxy putty. I thought I'd actually filmed myself doing this, but I must have not. Anyway, I filled it with a really strong epoxy putty and then drilled some fresh holes through it that were a bit smaller. And here I'm just drilling and tapping the posts on the body of the car. And then I'll be able to put some screws into that and hold it all together later on. There you can see where I filled the holes and drilled back through them. Now they're just about the same size as the pillars. Right, so there's that little mistake fixed, and we can move on to some painting. So to start out on the body of the car, I gave it a base rust coating. I did this with 3 cans of spray paint. So I started with a base coat of orange brown, and then over that I sprayed a very light splotchy coat of the espresso, which is a sort of coffee brown, and then again a light splotchy coat of mocha, which was a darker brown. Now here I've got some sepia ink and some dark and light rust washes, and I'm going to paint over the top of my rusty base coat with these. So I started by covering the whole thing with the light rust wash, and then over that I added splotches of the dark rust wash and the sepia tone. And I'll apply a couple of layers of the washes, and that'll end up with a nice complex sort of patinaed effect. So here it is after I've finished the washes. It's actually looking a little shiny there because I've hit it with a thin coat of clear to protect it while I kept working. And of course the same effect I've done on the doors there. Next I'm going to mask off the grille at the front with some liquid mask. There we go, and I'll let that dry. Now I'm going to apply some salt chipping. So to do this, I've just got some water and some table salt. I'll brush on the water, and I can sprinkle some salt on that. It'll stick on, and then that'll stop the next layer of paint that I'm going to apply from going all over the casting. I'll leave some little chipped areas of it. So I've applied it really heavily to the body of the car. So I only want a few scraps of paint on there really. There's the door. So I'll mix up some black paint here and some very thin white paint for my airbrush. And I'm going to use these to get a faded black paint effect by spraying the whole thing with the black and then very quickly rinsing out my airbrush and applying a very light misty layer of the white over the top of the still wet black paint. and they end up blending together a bit to create what looks like a greyish faded sort of black, like black paint that's been out in the sun too long. And then I just wash off the salt with some water. Now this is how it came out. So you can see I've just removed the liquid mask as well. And you can see all these scraps of the black paint on there. Next I'm going to use some silver paint to paint the chrome details. So there's the grille, giving it a sort of a scrappy paint job, like the chrome's been chipped away and rusted the metal underneath a little bit. And I also painted some of the window frames and the rear license plate and boot handle, and of course the door handles. There we go, they're detailed as well with the silver. And onto the plastic parts. I've hit them both with some black primer. Then I hit the interior section there with some silver from the top down. Then I did the same base rust coat as the car body. And I'm going to apply the washers over the wheel guards there. It's the same as I did on the body. Then I masked off the interior and applied much lighter salt onto the guards, so I want them to have a bit more black paint on them. And then again the black and white. Then I wash off that salt and of course remove the masking tape, and this is how that's come out. I quite like that colour for the interior, so I'm just going to apply a bit more of the sepia ink over that as a wash. There's actually a really nice detail in the rear of this car, but there's just not any point painting it because you can't see it at all. But it'll look good if you wanted to like chop off the back and make a convertible or something out of it. It did cross my mind. Okay, so there's the base, and I've hit that with some silver as well. And I'm going to use this Vallejo rust texture and spray paint over a very thin layer of that. And then I applied some rust and sepia wash to the bumper as well. Tie it in with the rest of the car. Right, so here's all the bits of our little Ford sedan ratted out and ready to go back together. I've got some nice aftermarket wheels there, some Bridgestones on them. So let's just take a quick look back at what we started with. Here's our little Ford sedan hot rod. Looking pretty cool as it is. We're going to be ratting ours out, so let's see how it ended up. And here it is, our finished customized custom 36 Ford sedan from Matchbox. It's been stripped down, ratted out, put back together, the nice rusty looking patina on it. It's also been lowered down quite a bit, not all the way, and a little bit of detailing on it. And of course those nice new aftermarket wheels. Well, that was a really fun build. I really enjoy doing the rusty looking cars. I think that patinaed finish with the little bit of chipped faded black paint came out looking really good. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Big thanks to my Patreons for helping to support the channel. The link's down below if you want to help out as well, along with a link where you can get 15% off of Starbond Superglue, which I use in just about all of my builds. Thanks heaps for watching. Really hope you enjoyed the video. Give it a like if you did, and click subscribe if you'd want to see some more videos like this one.